When the smoke cleared over the charred remains of the old Whitaker cabin, the fire crew thought the story ended there. Another tragic blaze out in the quiet woods of Harlow Ridge. But one of the responding K-9 units, a sable-coated German shepherd named Boone, wouldn't budge. He circled the ashes for hours, pawing, sniffing, whining at something no one else could see. Locals said dogs remember things we try to forget. Boone remembered something buried, something that would rip open the past and turn the whole town against itself. Rain came the next morning, soft and gray like a morning veil over Harlow Ridge. The scorched wood of the Whitaker cabin hissed and smoked as droplets hit embers buried deep under the rubble. Deputy Sarah Madsen stood just outside the yellow tape, arms crossed, wind cutting through her jacket. Her boots crunched over wet gravel as she watched Boone, stationed at the very edge of the wreckage, refuse to move. He sat there stiff, ears alert, nose twitching. Every time someone got near the debris he barked, sharp, short bursts. Not aggressive, not scared, something else. A warning maybe. "Boone," Sarah called softly. "Come here, buddy." The dog didn't even glance her way. Boone's handler, Officer Caleb Grant, had tried everything since the previous night. Treats, commands, even gently tugging on the leash. Nothing worked. The shepherd simply stared at the blackened ground near the cabin's center, sometimes pacing, sometimes whining low in his throat. Caleb looked tired, really tired. His hair was soaked, sticking to his forehead, eyes ringed in red from smoke and sleeplessness. "I've never seen him like this," he muttered. "Not in 5 years. Not even at the crash scene last winter." Sarah squatted beside the dog. Boone's fur was damp and reeking of soot, but his eyes were laser-focused. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" she asked. Caleb exhaled. "I don't know. I want to say it's just stress. But it's not." They looked at the ruins. The fire had started sometime after midnight. Neighbors saw the sky glow red through the pines. By the time first responders arrived, the structure was a skeleton of fire. And even though the owner, Dwight Whitaker, had been presumed dead inside, no remains were recovered. Not a tooth. Not a rib. Not a goddamn bone. Some said he never burned. Some said he wasn't there to begin with. But Boone thought something was. By noon, the scene had mostly cleared. Forensics had taken samples. Fire marshals had ruled the source suspicious. Accelerants were likely. But Boone stayed. Sarah stayed too. The two of them had history. Not romantic but close, saw each other through a lot. Boone had once saved Sarah's niece from freezing to death when she got lost in the woods. Since then, Sarah trusted the dog more than most people in the sheriff's department. A black SUV pulled up, tires crunching over wet gravel. District Fire Investigator Ron Mallory stepped out. Thin, wire-rimmed glasses, coat too clean for a man who'd been in this job as long as he had. He took one look at the dog and muttered, "Still." Sarah nodded. Something's got him worked up. Ron adjusted his gloves. Nothing left under there but ash. Dog's just traumatized. Saw the fire, maybe he smells residuals. "No," Caleb said firmly. "He knows something." Ron scoffed. "It's a German shepherd, not a psychic." Sarah said nothing, just watched Boone. Ron headed toward the wreckage, stepping over tape. Boone leapt forward, snarling, barking like mad. Caleb yanked the leash, but Boone fought back hard enough to strain his own neck. He didn't want Ron going in. "You seeing this?" Caleb grunted, trying to hold the dog back. Ron froze mid-step. The barking stopped. Boone stood still now, ears forward, tail low, body rigid. Sarah stepped forward, carefully walking toward the spot Boone had been guarding. "Here," she whispered. "This is where he's focused. Every time." The rain had started to thin, leaving rivulets along the black wood. The ground, soft now from water and ash, squelched beneath her boots. Ron grumbled but followed. Sarah bent down and brushed her glove over the debris. Something solid clinked underneath the ash. Not char. Not burnt timber. Metal. "Give me a light," she said. Caleb passed her a flashlight. She aimed the beam down and saw it. A steel box, fire-resistant. Edges scorched but intact. The kind people used for valuables. Or secrets, one swore. Where the hell did that come from? Sarah glanced at Boone. The dog had gone completely still. Not wagging. Not tense. Almost waiting. She pulled the box free, coughing as ash rose into her face. It was heavy, sealed with a twist lock. "We open it at the station," Caleb said. "No," Sarah replied. "We open it now." The lid groaned as she twisted it open. A sharp scent escaped. Charcoal, old papers, maybe blood. Boone growled low. Inside were folders. Documents. A single photograph curled at the edge. Sarah reached in with gloved hands and lifted it. Family. Smiling. Dwight Whitaker, unmistakably younger, his wife Emma, and a girl, 6 or 7 years old. Blonde curls. Holding a stuffed bear. Lee. Dwight didn't have a daughter. Sarah froze. "Did Dwight ever have kids?" she asked aloud. "No," Caleb replied immediately. "Never even married, far as I know." Sarah didn't answer. Because she had seen that bear before, years ago. On a bulletin board. Missing persons. That same child had gone missing in 1997. Just outside Harlow Ridge. Name. Emily Weller. Her body was never found. But here she was. Smiling. Standing next to a man who said he never had a family. By sundown, news of the photo had reached Sheriff Wayne Cordell. A grim bulldog of a man with too many skeletons in his closet and too few in the ground. He called Sarah into his office. "You want to stir this town up over a photo?" he asked, arms folded across his chest. "That's not just any photo, Wayne," she said. "That's a girl who went missing nearly 30 years ago. And she's with Dwight Whitaker." Wayne leaned forward. "Dwight's dead. Fire took care of that. There was no body," she said. "And now we've got Boone acting like a damn sentinel over this cabin. We found something buried." Wayne narrowed his eyes. "Drop it. There's nothing here but ghosts." Sarah felt the tension coil behind her ribs. "You were the one who signed off on the Emily Weller case. You ruled her missing with no leads. But we just found a photo proving she knew Dwight. What else did you bury?" Wayne didn't answer. Just looked past her. "You don't know what you're getting into, Madsen." That night Sarah took the photo home. She couldn't sleep. Boone was there too. Caleb had gone off shift. And the dog refused to go with him. Just curled up on her rug like he belonged there. She sat at the table with a glass of whiskey, staring at the photograph under the lamplight. The child's eyes were round and innocent. But there was something strange, an odd tilt in her smile, like she wasn't entirely comfortable. Like she was posed, forced. Sarah pulled an old case folder from her garage. She had copies of all the cold cases in town, one she'd obsessed over for years. And there it was, Emily Weller's file. Reports said she was last seen playing in her backyard. One neighbor said she saw a man in a green truck. The detail was dismissed. No green truck was ever found. Sarah flipped the photo over. Something was scrawled in faint ink. "Property of D.W." Her stomach turned. From the rug Boone growled. She looked up, eyes darting to the window. A shape moved just beyond the fence. Not an animal. Man. Butching. The next morning Sarah was gone before sunrise. The rain had stopped, but the air was still wet with the scent of burnt pine and soaked earth. Her boots crushed frost-bitten grass as she walked the perimeter of her fence. Nothing broken. No signs of entry. But Boone had been pacing all night, ears up, tail down, always facing the trees. He sensed something. And Sarah had learned a long time ago to trust the dog. Inside her truck, she replayed the past 24 hours in her head. The fire, the locked box, the photo, Wayne's refusal to escalate. And the writing on the back of the image. Property of D.W. Dwight Whitaker had always been a strange man. Reclusive. Quiet. Owned over 70 acres on the edge of town. He was the kind of guy who smiled at you in church, nodded on the sidewalk, but gave off that oily unease that made parents pull their kids a little closer. Now she had a missing girl's photo in his safe box. A girl last seen in 1997. A girl no one ever found. Sarah pulled up to the station and walked straight past the front desk to the evidence room. Caleb met her there. "She's still on your mind," he said, gesturing to the folder in her hands. "She never left." He looked over his shoulder, lowered his voice. "You think Whitaker took her? I think he was involved. And if he's not dead, he's watching." She didn't tell Caleb about the figure outside her fence. Not yet. She opened the folder again, this time paying closer attention to the edges of the photo. A second inscription, barely visible like it had been erased. Numbers. Coordinates. Caleb saw them too. "You think it's GPS? Too short," she muttered. "Looks more like a vault number. Or a room." She flipped through the rest of the documents from the lockbox. Most of it was worthless. Old insurance papers, deed copies, crumpled receipts, but one sheet caught her eye. A property transfer signed 2 decades ago. A second plot of land, listed under a trust. Sarah stared at the address. She knew that road. Backside of Hollis Hill. No one lived there anymore. Caleb followed her gaze. "What is it?" "I think I know where he kept her." The drive up to Hollis Hill felt longer than usual. Gravel roads wound through high oaks and steep ridges, leading to nothing but silence. Sarah remembered riding bikes out here as a kid, long before the land became overgrown and left to rot. Most of the cabins were abandoned. People moved closer to town. The woods took back the rest. They reached the gate around midday. Rusted chain. Lock already broken. Caleb cut the engine. Boone was in the back seat, restless. His head was up, nose twitching. "He knows," Caleb said. Sarah popped the door open. They moved quietly, following the overgrown trail until they reached an old shed built against the slope of a hill. Paint peeling. Door half off the hinge. Boone stepped in first. He didn't hesitate. The inside smelled of rot, mildew, and something fouler, chemical and damp. In the back, half buried in dirt and years of dust, was a trapdoor. Sarah pulled out her flashlight. "Help me." Together they wrenched it open. Russ screamed. Below, a short drop into a concrete-lined cellar. They lowered themselves one by one, boots clanking on hard floor. It was darker than it should have been. Too quiet. Sarah scanned the room. Shelves. Old medical supplies. Chains bolted into the wall. Stains on the concrete. Cut. Worn. Indented. A single camera mounted to a rusted stand. Her stomach twisted. Caleb whispered, "Jesus." Boone growled. A flicker of light glinted from under the cot. Sarah knelt and reached in. Metal box. Not locked. Inside VHS tapes. Each labeled with initials and dates. The oldest. E.W., July 1997. Her hands shook. He recorded them. She looked at Caleb, his jaw clenched so tight it trembled. Sarah whispered, "We were never meant to find this." They drove back in silence. Boone stared out the window, head low. At the station, Sarah placed the tapes in evidence, logged everything. She asked for Sheriff Cordell. He didn't come. Instead, his secretary appeared at her door. "He's out sick. Told me not to bother him today." Sarah didn't believe that for a second. She called his personal line. "Voicemail." Caleb stood in the doorway. "Think he's hiding something. I think he knew about this years ago. And maybe he buried it. Or worse." She looked up. "You don't mean." "I mean," Caleb said slowly, "that if you had a witness or a confession or even a suspect, and you wanted to protect them, you'd suppress evidence, wouldn't you? You think he protected Whitaker." Caleb stepped inside. Dwight owned half this town in the 90s. Money, land, donations to every campaign, including Cordell's. Sarah felt it all click. Slowly, like a fog pulling back. Emily Weller didn't vanish. She was taken. And someone in power made sure no one came looking too hard. That night, Sarah went home, locked her doors, drew every curtain. Boone stayed close. Around midnight, headlights flared across her living room wall. She froze. Car idled outside, engine humming. She stepped to the side window, peeking past the curtain. Black SUV. Same one Ron Mallory drove. Except this time Ron wasn't alone. A second figure sat in the passenger seat, hidden behind tinted glass. Then the engine cut. Silence. Sarah's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring once, twice, 3 times before picking up. No voice. Just the sound of something crackling, like fire. Then a whisper. She was never the first. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her reflection in the dark window. Boone whined, ears flicking toward the door. And outside, in the black pines of Harlow Ridge, someone was watching again. Not just her, but the town. Because whatever burned down in that cabin didn't die, just went underground. By morning, Sarah felt the weight of something shifting, like a stone unturned for too long, now dislodged, sending tremors through Harlow Ridge. Nothing in town looked different, but everything felt different. The way people talked lower at the diner. The way blinds pulled shut when she walked by. Even the wind carried something heavier, as if the trees themselves were holding secrets. At the station, the front desk was quiet. Too quiet. Caleb wasn't at his post. Neither was Ron. And Sheriff Wayne Cordell's office door was locked. Sarah knocked anyway. No answer. She knocked harder. Still nothing. She turned to Marla, the receptionist. "You seen the sheriff today?" Marla hesitated. "He called. Said he was taking a personal day." "Another one." Marla shrugged. "Didn't sound right. Just hung up without waiting for me to say a word." Sarah's gut twisted. She returned to her office, shut the blinds, and powered on the tape player she'd pulled from evidence. She hadn't planned to watch any of the recordings alone, but Caleb wasn't answering his phone, and something told her she couldn't wait. She slipped in the tape marked EW. July 1997. The screen fuzzed to life. Black and white. No sound. A girl. Blonde. Curled hair. Sitting on a wooden chair, hands folded in her lap. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying either. Just still. Her eyes flicked toward the lens, then down, then away, as if she'd been trained where to look. Then a shadow moved in the frame. Just the shoulder. Man. Lean. White. Sarah leaned closer, heart hammering. He knelt beside the girl, offered something, a doll maybe, then slowly reached toward her. The screen went black. No timestamp. No label. No evidence of what happened next. Just enough to say, she was here. And he was with her. Sarah rushed to the archives. She pulled the entire Weller case file again. Every report, every note, every photograph. She scanned the original evidence logs. That same doll. The one in the video. It had been found in the woods 2 days after Emily disappeared. But the record listed the discovery as unrelated. Signed off by Sheriff Cordell. Sarah sat back in her chair. He'd seen the connection. He chose not to follow it. She remembered his words in her office. "You don't know what you're getting into." She did now. Outside, Boone started barking. Alert. She bolted up. The dog had charged the window, tail stiff, nose pressed to the glass. Sarah grabbed her sidearm and stepped outside. Across the street, near the empty lot behind the church, a green pickup truck sat idling. Rusted. Familiar. Then it pulled off slowly, tires rolling over gravel as if daring her to follow. She didn't. Not yet. She walked Boone around the block, letting the dog lead. He sniffed something near the alley, a crushed cigarette recently put out. Sarah bent down. Stamped into the mud. A footprint. Boot heel. Large. Someone had been standing there, watching the station, waiting. That night she found Caleb. Not at home. Not at the station. But at his father's cabin, 10 miles out near Bear Creek. She drove there without headlights the last half-mile. Approached on foot. She found him on the porch, shotgun across his lap, cigarette between his fingers, boots muddy to the knees. "You weren't answering," she said softly. Caleb didn't look up. I know. You all right? No. She sat beside him. For a while they didn't speak. Then he whispered. He came to me last night. Who? Cordell. He was drunk. Angry. Told me to let it go. Sarah stiffened. Did he threaten you? Not directly. But he said something else. Said Boone always had a nose for trouble. Just like his handler. Caleb took a long drag. I think Wayne was part of it, he muttered. Maybe not back then. But now. He knows more than he'll ever admit. Sarah looked out into the woods. I think it goes deeper. Like what? She hesitated. Emily Weller wasn't the only one. Caleb's head snapped toward her. I watched the second tape, she said. Another girl. Different initials. Same setup. Same shed. Same man. Caleb looked sick. How many? Sarah didn't answer. She didn't know. The next day, the second tape made its way to the county prosecutor. That's when everything broke. Not publicly. Not yet. But silently behind closed doors. Sarah came into work to find her access revoked from the server. Caleb's locker emptied. Ron Mallory. Transferred overnight. Sheriff Cordell. Out of town. Medical emergency, the department said. And Boone. Missing from the K9 kennel. Vanished. Sarah tore through the compound, checked every room, called every number. No one had seen the dog since the night before. She found one of his paw prints near the back gate. Another near the fence line. And then nothing. She called Caleb. I'm coming, he said. Bring a rifle. By nightfall, they were back at the Whitaker ruins. The ashes had cooled. The tape cordon removed. Just a black hole in the forest where something evil once lived. Sarah paced the edge, calling Boone's name. Nothing. But Caleb pointed to the dirt just past the perimeter. Tracks. Fresh. Dog tracks. Leading into the trees. They followed. No flashlights. Just moonlight and instinct. They hiked for over an hour, the woods getting darker, denser, quieter. Then they saw it. A flicker of movement ahead. Tail. Boone. He was sitting still just like before. At the base of an old oak. Looking down. Sarah rushed forward. There at Boone's feet was a mound of dirt. Freshly disturbed. She knelt. Started digging. Hands shaking. Heart beating so loud it filled her ears. Then her fingers struck something solid. Not a coffin. Crepe. Caleb helped her lift it. They pried it open with his knife. Inside. Blankets. Plastic cup. A photo pinned to the side. Another girl. Alive. Recently. Sarah's breath caught. And then she saw the item tucked in the corner. A journal. Leather-bound. Faded with ash and years. On the inside cover. To the ones who watched but said nothing. May this rot with your silence. D.W. She looked up at Caleb. They knew, she whispered. He nodded, face pale. All of them. It took everything in Sarah not to vomit. She sat on the back bumper of Caleb's truck with the journal open in her lap, trying to steady her hands as the wind picked up. The trees whispered. Boone paced restlessly nearby, glancing toward the woods as if he knew more danger still lingered in the dark. Caleb stood guard, shotgun slung low across his chest. Inside the crate, beyond the old toys and girl's photograph, they had found one other thing. A plastic ID bracelet, the kind hospitals used. Faded. Barely legible. Initials. Another girl. Another name not in any file. Sarah flipped through the journal. The pages weren't dated. They were scattered thoughts. Fragments. Drawings. Lots of names. Some were initials. Others full. Some scratched out violently, almost carved through the paper. One line appeared over and over, in slanted handwriting. They paid to forget. She turned to Caleb. He kept records. He knew what he was doing. Caleb looked at the open crate. He kept them like pets. No, Sarah said quietly. Like secrets. She closed the book and stood. The air was colder now, sharp. It bit at her skin. Something in the woods had shifted. She felt it in her spine. "They'll try to erase this," she said. "Everything." Caleb nodded once. "We don't let them." Back at the station, the lights were still on. Too many for a building that was supposed to be half closed. Boone growled the moment they stepped out of the truck. Sarah scanned the parking lot. 3 unfamiliar cars. County plates. One with government credentials hanging from the dash. She stuffed the journal into her bag and zipped it shut. Inside, voices echoed down the hall. Calm, professional. Tight. She and Caleb entered through the rear. In the evidence room, a man in a dark suit was boxing files. Another removed tapes from a cabinet and slipped them into a locked case. Sarah stepped in front of him. "Where are those going?" The man barely looked at her. "Transferred to state custody." "Says who?" He held up a signed order, state attorney's seal. Sarah read it fast. Half the paragraph was redacted. He felt sick. "You didn't even watch them." "It's not your call anymore, deputy." She clenched her jaw. "It's not yours either." He didn't answer. Boone barked behind her. One sharp warning. The man flinched. Caleb stepped forward. "We'll file appeal. We'll go to press." The man smiled faintly. "You think press will touch this?" Then he walked out. Sarah stood in the empty evidence room, the shelves half empty now. Cleaned out. Sanitized. She looked at Caleb. "They're sealing it. Burying the whole thing." He ran a hand through his hair. "They've done it before. You saw that journal." She sat at the desk, pulled it out again and flipped to the back. One page was creased and wrinkled like it had been read dozens of times. The handwriting was tighter here. More urgent. "I wasn't the first to take them. I just kept them. 'Cause they left them with me. 'Cause I listened. 'Cause they trusted me. And they should not have." Below that, a list. Names. Some familiar. Others not. Then, underlined twice. The quiet ones funded it. The loud ones silenced it. And the dogs were the only ones who cared. Sarah stared at that sentence. Boone sat down next to her, resting his head on her leg. She whispered, "How long has this been going on?" Caleb said, "Longer than us." They didn't go home that night. Instead, they drove out to the edge of town, a broken-down church that hadn't held service since 2004. The roof sagged. The bell tower leaned slightly left. And in the basement, dust, mold, and old county records that never made it to digital. Sarah spent hours combing through microfilm and storage boxes. She found what she was looking for just past 3 a.m. A newspaper clipping, yellowed and curled. 1991. Local girl dies in fall. Ruling. Accidental. The girl's name, Marissa Hale. Initials, Inch. The same as the bracelet in the crate. But Sarah flipped the article over and saw the photo from her school days. Same curls, same eyes. The photo from the crate. Marissa hadn't died in a fall. She had disappeared. And someone wrote the ending for her. Outside, Caleb leaned against the church wall, cigarette in hand, Boone beside him like a statue. "You find her?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "Marissa Hale. They said she fell into the river. Died on impact." "But the body?" Caleb asked. "Never found. Case closed anyway." She held up the bracelet. "She was with Dwight. By morning they made a decision. Go public. They would leak the journal. Upload the tapes. Burn every bridge if it meant breaking the silence. If the state wanted to bury the truth, they'd make it impossible to ignore. But first, they needed to find Sheriff Cordell." Sarah called every number. Checked his house. Visited his cabin. Me. Then Boone started barking again. Deep, guttural. Nose pressed to the dirt. The dog sprinted into the woods behind Cordell's cabin, leaving Caleb and Sarah running to keep up. They followed him through thorns, over rock beds, until they came to a clearing. A burned-out car. Still smoking. Inside, a body slumped in the driver's seat. Sheriff Wayne Cordell. Gun in his lap. Bullet hole in the side of his head. Suicide, Caleb whispered. Sarah shook her head. Boone whined, patted around the back of the car. Nose up. There was a set of footprints leading away. Not toward the road. Into the woods. Sarah crouched beside the body. On the dashboard a sealed envelope. Name. She opened it slowly. Just one line inside. Forgive me. I wasn't brave. But I wasn't the worst. Her throat tightened. Then she saw the second note. On the back of a gas receipt. Another name. One she hadn't seen before. Judge. Still on the bench. Back at the truck, Caleb looked pale. This doesn't end with Dwight. Sarah nodded, eyes dark. It starts with him. She looked at the list in the journal again. There were 7 names still unchecked. Boone sat between them, waiting. Till still. Head up. Like he already knew. The sun barely rose over Harlow Ridge that morning. It just pressed a weak light against the mist, casting everything in gray. Caleb drove, Sarah beside him. Boone stretched across the back seat, alert but quiet. The journal sat between them like a ticking bomb. Sarah flipped the pages again, landing on the list. 10 names. 3 were now accounted for. Dwight Whitaker, deceased. Wayne Cordell, deceased. Marissa Hale, deceased. 7 left. Some had initials, others full names. One was only marked Judge R. Another read K. Paid in cash. The rest were scattered across decades. Patterns emerged. Landowners, donors, men with reach. Always men. Caleb said. If we take this to the state press, they'll bury us before the second article runs. Then we go local, Sarah said. We show them the photos. Tapes. People around here know that girl. Someone remembers. Boone barked once. Dark. They glanced back. He was pawing at the journal. Nose on the page with the names. Then he whined. They drove to the one person Sarah knew would talk. Claire Weller, Emily's mother. She lived in a small house past the grain mill. Shutters always drawn. People said she hadn't left Harlow Ridge since the day Emily vanished. Claire answered the door in her robe, face hollowed by years of quiet grief. Her eyes flicked to Boone first, then to Sarah, then to the journal in her hand. I know why you're here, she said quietly. Come in. Inside, her house was dim, full of muted colors and still air. Pictures lined the fireplace. Baby Emily in pigtails, Halloween costumes, school portraits. And a space on the mantel left blank. Claire sat without invitation. I saw Dwight the week before she went missing, she said. He was in the store. Bought rope, duct tape, candy. Did you report it? Sarah asked. Claire nodded. Sheriff Cordell came by. Took the statement. Then he told me not to stir things up. Her voice broke. He said Dwight was clean. That I was looking for someone to blame. Caleb looked down. He knew. They all did, Claire whispered. And not one of them did a damn thing. Sarah slid the photograph across the table. The one from the journal. Claire stared at it. She was scared, she said. You can see it in her shoulders. She wasn't the only one, Sarah said. Claire finally looked up. I want to help. Claire's interview ran that night. A local blog, small, mostly used for school updates and farmers' market notices, published her statement with a photo, the quote, and an anonymized version of the journal entry. By sunrise, the town wasn't whispering anymore. It was screaming. And the list. People started recognizing the names. Judge R. Judge Thomas Redding, still presiding in county court. Known for unusual sentencing. Owned property near Dwight's old land. Lewis Kane, former school board president. Moved to Nevada in 2001 after a sudden resignation. And the 5th name B.G. Barbara Greeley. Not a man. Teacher. Sarah sat at her kitchen table, journal open, Boone curled at her feet, her phone lighting up with calls from reporters, victims' families, and people she hadn't spoken to in years. The town was unraveling. And some were fighting back. That night her truck was torched. She'd parked it outside her house. Woke to Boone barking. ran outside to flames licking the sky. Fire department ruled it arson. Someone had doused the interior with accelerant. Tossed a match. No prints. No cameras. Just a message. She and Caleb moved fast. They stored digital copies of the journal on encrypted drives. Handed backups to trusted friends. Mailed packages to out-of-town press with notes that read, "If something happens to us, release everything." The sheriff's badge was still technically hers, but the town had started calling her something else now. Whistleblower. Or worse, traitor. She found her tires slashed. Her mailbox smashed. Notes slipped under her door. Dogs get put down. You think you're saving anyone. He was keeping them alive. That one chilled her most. Because someone out there still believed what Dwight did was protection. Maybe even mercy. Then came the break. A woman named Tessa showed up at the station. Mid-40s. Nervous. Hands shaking. She sat across from Sarah and placed a cassette on the desk. "I was in the program," she said. "What program?" "The one Dwight ran. The one they funded." Tessa's voice cracked. "I was 14. They said I was broken. That my mother didn't want me anymore. Judge Redding signed the order." Caleb watched silently, fists tight. Tessa continued. "They sent me to reform housing. But it wasn't housing. It was a trailer. No heat. Locked doors. Men would come. They had lists. They'd pick a name." Sarah's throat went dry. "They paid Dwight to keep us quiet," Tessa said. "He made us believe it was better than being homeless." "And the others?" Sarah asked. "Some of us got out. Some disappeared." Sarah picked up the cassette. "What's on this?" "A recording. One of the men. Talking to Dwight. I stole it. You ever show this to the cops?" Tessa smiled sadly. "I am showing it to the cops." The recording was grainy. Hissing. Then a voicemail. "She's too old now. Get a younger one." Then Dwight. "That'll cost you double. She talks in her sleep." Caleb punched the wall. Boone whimpered. Sarah sat still. Rage curling behind her ribs like acid. By morning, the local paper ran the first headline. "Whistleblower Deputy Uncovers Decades-Old Child Exploitation Ring in Harlow Ridge." By noon it went national. Judge Redding was placed on leave. 2 names on the list fled town. The rest, still hidden. But not for long. That evening, Sarah stood in the ruins of the Whitaker cabin. The ground had cooled. The crime scene tape was long gone. Boone stood beside her, tail down, eyes locked on the black soil. Caleb stepped beside her. "You think he kept journals for all of them?" Sarah nodded. "He was meticulous. But organized." They both stared at the ground. "We dig," she said. And Boone began to scratch. The wind over Harlow Ridge that night wasn't just cold. It felt ancient, like something buried for too long was breathing again. Sarah stood at the center of the old Whitaker ruins, shovel in hand, boots caked in soot and mud. Caleb worked beside her, sweat on his brow despite the chill. Boone paced around the perimeter, nose low, tail stiff. They dug in silence. Hours passed. Dawn crept over the hills like a bruised sky slowly healing. Then the shovel struck something solid. Bunk. Sarah froze. Caleb dropped to his knees, clearing the dirt with bare hands. Another steel box. Identical to the one they'd found the first night. Fireproof. Boone growled low. Sarah braced herself and flipped it open. Inside tapes. Photos. Full register. Each file labeled with a date, initials, age. Each child accounted for. Some marked released. Some marked sold. Disposed. Sarah dropped to her knees, bile in her throat. This wasn't just Dwight Whitaker's sickness. It was a network. Business. A ledger of human lives. Caleb stood over her. "It goes back 30 years. "No," Sarah said, voice raw. 40. She reached for the folder buried at the bottom. Inside was a photograph, black and white. A young boy, barely 7, bound to a chair, smiling, and standing behind him, Sheriff Cordell, young, smiling too. They drove straight to the federal field office 80 miles east. No detours, no stops. They handed over every file, every tape. Sarah gave them the ledger and the recording from Tessa. Boone lay at her feet, eyes dull, as if he'd carried all of this in his bones for years. The agents didn't ask many questions. They just took everything, eyes wide, faces pale. Then they promised action. But Sarah didn't wait. She returned to Harlow Ridge that same night and went house to house, not with weapons or threats, but with truth. She told the families who had lost children, the ones who'd been ignored. She showed them the photos, the names. The town came alive. And then it fractured. Some still defended the dead. Others lashed out. But no one could pretend anymore. The silence was over. 2 weeks later, the Department of Justice issued a statement. An organized trafficking ring embedded in local governance and law enforcement was active in Harlow Ridge for over 4 decades. Multiple arrests pending. Names followed: Judge Redding, Lewis Kane, Barbara Greeley, 3 state employees, 2 federal clerks, 10 more still under investigation. The story spread. Harlow Ridge was now a symbol of silence, of buried horror, of unthinkable endurance. Tessa testified before a grand jury. Claire Weller got a public apology. The Weller case was reclassified. Homicide, conspiracy. And Boone. He was retired from service. Sarah adopted him officially. His last duty had been the most important of his life. On a quiet night in April, Sarah walked through the woods behind her house. Boone limped beside her, age catching up to him. They stopped at a small clearing. Fresh stone. A single name carved in gray marble. Emily Weller. Below it. She was never forgotten. Caleb joined them, a flask in hand, boots scuffed. "They're never going to tell the whole truth," he said. "No," Sarah replied. "But they can't bury it anymore." They sat in silence. Birdsong echoed through the pines. The same woods that had once swallowed children whole now breathed differently. Clean air. No ghosts tonight. Sarah reached down and scratched Boone's ears. "You were the only one who didn't blink." Boone licked her hand. Still watchful. Still ready. And far beneath the cabin's ashes, long cooled and settled by time, another box remained. Unfound. Now. But the dog would know. He always did.